Today on Newsgirls, New York Times bombshell, Netanyahu prolonged the war,
ignored his military's advice to further his own political agenda.
To start unpacking your 6-month investigation,
he whispered to his ear, Israel will launch war against Iran.
Billionaire summer camp.
Every tech and media CEO that you can think of gathered in Sun Valley, Idaho.
I managed to get hold of a couple of agendas.
You did write an article about the over-the-top kind of reporter crackdown. In Shark Week behind the scenes.
So exciting for us to be invited by Discovery. What is going through your head when they're like swimming inches away from you?
There's a moment where the shark charges me.
Welcome to Newsgirls. I'm Wren.
And I'm Mabel. Let's get into the stories. Just a few days ago, the New York Times dropped a bombshell investigation into how Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu prolonged the war in Gaza for his own political gain, basically choosing to prioritize his far-right coalition over peace and reportedly even the survival of several hostages at critical moments in the war.
If you haven't read the report yet, we highly recommend you do. The reporter spoke to over 100 officials and uncovered haunting details from secret meetings and classified intelligence that proved Netanyahu ignored his military's advice to further his own political agenda, seemingly to try to escape corruption charges that have been looming over him.
Yeah, the investigation paints a really sinister picture of the inner workings of Netanyahu's operations and priorities. Like, this example really struck us, how his team basically decided it was worth it to leak a top secret Hamas document to the public, which revealed to Hamas that Israel was actually tapping their communications just to quell a protest against Netanyahu.
It also illustrates how Netanyahu was warned of security threats from Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran before the October 7th attack. He was told Israel is in grave danger, and he chose to do basically nothing about it and instead focus on domestic politics. And then when the attack happened, he immediately started deflecting blame onto his security chiefs.
And this piece cites a never previously reported conversation between Netanyahu and his top military chief just minutes after the October 7th attack, basically discussing how war has begun. And even though his security chiefs had warned him of an attack, the prime minister is careful to emphasize in this recorded call that he doesn't know anything because he wasn't warned specifically about a frontal invasion from Gaza. And so this pattern of prioritizing optics by deleting recorded conversations and secretly changing timestamps is persisting basically throughout the war.
Yeah, it seems very important to him not to bear any responsibility for this oversight, even if that means casting doubt on the competence of his own military. So we are thrilled to speak to New York Times writer Ronen Bergman, who's one of the authors of this explosive investigation. Ronen also wrote the book Rise and Kill First: The Secret History of Israel's Targeted Assassinations. And he was on the team of Times reporters that won the Pulitzer last year for reporting on Israel and Gaza.
So Ronen, this piece is so incredible. It's such an in-depth look into Netanyahu and kind of just the political chaos that he lives in. So to start unpacking your 6-month investigation, can you tell us about what you call the 3 unavoidable truths that you learned through your reporting that we'll kind of just discuss through this conversation?
One is that from very early on, like a decade, Benjamin Netanyahu did not want to defeat Hamas because, according to him, in private conversations and in public appearances, he saw Hamas as an asset. He came to Qatar and asked Qatar to fund the Hamas-run government in Gaza. The same government that now he's sending troops to kill was funded by Netanyahu. The second is that Benjamin Netanyahu, being on trial for severe corruption, when he came back to power in early 23, he led a what he called a reform, but was basically a judicial overhaul to weaken the gatekeepers, to weaken the judiciary. And what happened was that it started a massive rift inside the Israeli people, inside the citizens of Israel. Millions went to the streets. It weakened the defense forces of Israel. The enemies circling Israel, they saw that, and they said, maybe this is the good time to attack. The third, and much of the story is dealing with that third, is that Benjamin Netanyahu, throughout the last 2 years, had quite a few chances when he stood on a T-junction. He could take a right turn, sign a deal that would bring back the hostages, end of the destruction of Gaza, and something that was a trophy for Netanyahu, a massive political achievement, a normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia, but he took a left turn. Instead of all of those good things, instead of, turning the page into a new future for the Middle East, he decided to continue the war. And I think he does want to release the hostages, and he does want to have normalization with Saudi Arabia. But there are things he wants more, or to be more precise, there are things that he fears more. He was more afraid of the integrity of his coalition and the extreme right wing. They wanted to continue the war. They want to annex the Gaza. They want to expel the Palestinians. They want to reestablish the settlements. And they said, if you go to a ceasefire, you don't have a government.
And so we have all seen, the world has seen the devastating cost of not reaching a ceasefire in Gaza. Can you help us understand what has been the cost of delay for Israel?
What you just said was one of the prices to pay, the massive, unbelievable deterioration from the point of view of all the world, watching in horror the devilish attack of Hamas on Israel on October 7, butchering civilians. The whole world was very sympathetic with Israel. And from that point to where we are now, and I think that Israelis don't know, Israelis watching Israeli TV, don't know how this looks in the world. Israel, again, comes as Goliath against David, as the aggressor against the victim. This is one price. The other price are 41 hostages that came to Gaza alive and died ever since in captivity. We're talking about now close to 1,000 Israeli soldiers that were killed. You're talking about a country that is on the brink of bankruptcy.
Before October 7th, the military had concluded that Israel is in grave danger. What was really interesting to us is that it seems like through your piece, Netanyahu started deflecting responsibility and kind of blaming the military and security, saying, they're the reason that the country isn't prepared. Why was he doing that? Is that like wise during, time of war to blame the military of your own country?
In the second phone call he got that morning, you see the seeds of trying to shift all the responsibility on someone else. He also says, I don't see anything in the intelligence. They told me that Hamas is deterred. And at the same time, his son, who didn't come to serve in the military, who is residing in Miami, is tweeting the most horrible conspiracy theories about the leaders of the military, conspired with Hamas before October 7, that they knew October 7 is coming, and that it was all in order to destroy his father's leadership of the country.
That is wild. Even just to see Netanyahu's, in his head, every little machination that he makes is all PR, and it's all to make him look better in the eyes of the Israelis. We know when October 7th happened, his popularity took a huge dip. How has he been able to come back into favor? Who do they blame for prolonging it if it's not him?
So if you look at the polls, you'll see that vast majority of the Israelis think that he as well is responsible. It's a military disaster. It's an intelligence fiasco. Vast majority of Israelis are saying we should go for a deal and end the war and bring back the hostages. I think that the most telling scene in the story, for me at least, was that in a certain point, the Biden administration got so frustrated and so desperate with Netanyahu. He wanted to speak with Netanyahu in his own language, and they knew that he is like a fan. He's obsessed with polls. So they told him that at least 50% of the Israelis are in favor of a deal. And he looked at the American seniors in the White House and says, not 50% of my voters.
Ugh.
Now, to say something like that, when you talk about people that every day are going through such misery, and you say, I don't care. Now, what happened is that he is a political genius. He is being assisted by the massive propaganda machine, nicknamed in Israel the poison machine, that is able to, first of all, crush any opponent, invent stories that just by having such a strong speaker, so they can use their channels and their bots and their Twitter accounts. And at the end of that, the machine supersedes everything in Israel. His aide forbade the military from recording the meetings. So so it's a machine, it's a whole system. He believes that if he doesn't, he might end up in jail because of the corruption charges. So to fight the corruption charges, and this is the reason behind the judicial overhaul, he needs to still be the prime minister. It's all connected. And we are getting closer and closer, I think, to one big climax on the last chapter.
Your piece discusses how Netanyahu's like political ambitions don't just influence the war in Israel and Gaza. Israel's military attacks have expanded past that to Iran, Lebanon, even Syria. That's been happening this week. And you write about how that's also influenced by Netanyahu trying to curry favor with this far-right coalition. Why does he need to attack these other countries to do that?
Yeah. Nothing is black or white. There are, of course, all the shades of gray in the middle. The problem is that you don't know with Netanyahu how to divide between his politics. So, for example, there was I would say, a cosmic coincidence that exactly in the last minute before the Haredi parties threatened to leave the coalition, he calls one of the leaders secretly to his room. He had him sign a special secrecy document, and then he whispered to his ear, Israel will launch war against Iran. Then he says, now you want to quit? Before? Now, very interesting coincidence that he timing all of that, and at the end, there are national security considerations inside what he has done. Because of this, he is now in his peak of power after October 7, stronger than ever because he basically smashed most of his rivals and competition.
Making it personal to you as an Israeli journalist living in Israel, what is it like writing critically about Israel's position on the war and the Israeli government? Like, we know even our American journalist colleagues feel so much pressure not to criticize Israel.
I can answer you with the number of death threats I'm getting a day, the throes of filth that the poison machine is using against me. Benjamin Netanyahu and his ministers said publicly that I tried to disclose to Hezbollah the pager operation in order to sabotage it. So they said that the chief of staff leaked to me the fact that the pages are booby-trapped. I published that in order to tell Hezbollah, in order to sabotage the operation, all of that just because we wanted to destroy the leadership of Netanyahu. Now, it's insane, but these people enjoy parliamentarian immunity, and I cannot sue them. But this is not about me. Israel is under dire threat of stopping being the state of the Jews and a democracy at the same time. And I think that our work as journalists, bringing the truth out, what leaders in the Middle East, especially Netanyahu, are doing, and have them accountable for what they did.
Last weekend, basically every tech and media CEO that you can think of gathered in Sun Valley, Idaho for Billionaire Summer Camp, aka investment firm Allen & Co.'s annual conference.
And it's literally a stereotype of what you think of when you think like tech billionaire conference. Apparently 175 private jets touched down last week for this private, secretive luxury retreat.
And during the day, the conference attendees participate in classic camp activities like golfing, hiking, and river rafting.
Just like imagine all these like stuffy CEOs like flopping around in a river raft together. And the guest list is pretty insane. Like, it's not just a few tech moguls, it is literally everyone.
No, we seriously need to read the list so you can grasp how many we're talking about. So Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Sam Altman, Tim Cook, Alex Karp, Michael Bloomberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Disney CEO Bob Iger.
Yeah, CEOs of Uber, Airbnb, Google, Spotify, Snapchat, YouTube, Mattel, Netflix, Sony. Even the King of Jordan was seen there, like making deals with everyone.
Yeah, the only billionaire CEO that wasn't there was Elon, but he must have been busy starting up his America party.
And then there were some like high profile journalists there, like Anderson Cooper, Gayle King, and Diane Sawyer, but it was a media blackout. Everything was very top secret. So even they weren't allowed to report on what they found.
Yeah, so many huge mergers and acquisitions have started at this retreat, like Disney acquiring ABC, AOL Time Warner merger, Even Jeff Bezos purchasing the Washington Post, Comcast, NBC Universal, Yahoo, Verizon, and so many more.
And this closed door conference has, I guess, been a thing since 1983, but it is making a lot of like extra noise and enraging a lot of people this year, probably because it feels kind of tone deaf against a very politically polarized backdrop. Like, think of all of the anti-billionaire sentiment we're seeing with like the Bezos wedding and even the New York City mayoral race.
Do you see all the dark humor comments like, I wish the flooding hit Idaho, or Iran, you have the chance to do the funniest thing ever? And some people just flat out posted bomb memes.
I don't know, like everyone is really pissed off by this conference. And even though most of what was talked about was under wraps, we did learn that the main focus this year was AI. So a CEO said it was, quote, the 1,000-pound gorilla in every conversation and in every meeting.
And that comment was one of the only things we've seen any attendee say publicly. But a lot of journalists just flew to Sun Valley hoping to catch these CEOs on their way to their morning activity.
One of them was James Franey, a writer for the New York Post, and he has a very interesting story of him just like sitting at a cafe, kind of like reporting, minding his own business, when two police officers like approached him and accused him of harassing guests. He was then asked to sign a no trespass order, which basically bans him from entering Sun Valley for a year, which he refused to sign. So we hear the full story and more details on the conference from James.
Okay, so James, for those of us who are not billionaires or moguls and have never gone to this conference, can you set the scene for us? Like when you touched down in Sun Valley, what was it like? What's the vibe? Who did you see?
So the whole event itself is described as summer camp for billionaires. And of course, as I found out, to my cost, that comes with that very high security. So it's actually very hard to get a glimpse of the VIPs that are arriving. Very, very five-star resort that was once frequented by the author Ernest Hemingway when he was finishing For Whom the Bell Tolls. When you're a member of the media, you're not really getting close to those in power with all the money, as I found out.
And did you get any scoops on like kind of what the focus of the conference was on this year? Like what was everyone kind of just talking about?
So, I mean, the headline topic was, of course, the impact of AI on the finance, tech, and media industries. Probably not going to be the year that I win the Pulitzer in terms of investigative journalism. Many of the reporters on site really struggled to get any headlines at all. Simply, if the executives don't want to talk to you, you're not going to get much in the way of news. We got one interview with Sam Altman, that was it.
Whoa. And do we know anything about what they're, like you said, maybe some leaks of the daily schedules? Like what activities do they do in Sun Valley?
So, I mean, after I got booted out and banned for a year, I managed to get hold of a couple of agendas from the Friday and Saturday. And I can't help thinking that maybe we don't need to believe the hype about this conference being the epicenter of M&A deals that it's sometimes made out to be.
Okay.
Basically, back-to-back sporting activities, so cycling, horse riding, even an hour of a knitting session at the Sun Valley Resort. So I think it's an open question as to how much work is actually getting done. It's more of a boondoggle for billionaires who just want to catch up with old friends away from the glaze of the world's media.
Wow. So did you like happen to see any of that? Did you see billionaires kind of just like hanging out together and just casually talking?
Right. So there's on site, there's this Austrian themed cafe. You can see a lot of them on their coffee runs in the morning. Mike Bloomberg was there, Ivanka Trump, Alex von Furstenberg, son of Diane. They were hanging out there on my final day at the conference. So that's obviously one of the exclusives I was chasing, given how little else was happening on the day, just to see how people were tipping and if they were treating the baristas fairly. I think that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back in the end. But yeah, that's where you could do most of the quote unquote star watching, as it were.
Well, you did write an article about the over-the-top kind of reporter crackdown at this conference. You were actually confronted by police officers at this Austrian cafe. Can you tell us what happened?
Right. So as you may have read in one particular newsletter, they reported that it was because we're basically asking questions of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Ivanka Trump. These questions were fairly innocuous, but both subjects didn't really have much of an issue with it. I think what might have been the thing that annoyed security, and particularly the staffers at the cafes that I was going around, like looking at basically the checks on the tables to see how much everyone had been tipping. And I asked very directly to the managers, tell us how much Ivanka tipped, what did she order? I mean, we really were scraping the deepest, darkest depths of the breaking news barrel, I guess I won't be going back next year.
But you did speak to Ivanka and Scott Bessent, right? Did they say anything?
I mean, Secretary Bessent, he is incredibly polite, incredibly good at deflecting. So he did give me the groundbreaking scoop that his speech would be, quote, America first. My particular question to Ivanka Trump, I want to know what's going on with the talks with regards to the Waldorf Astoria in Washington, D.C. We understand that talks are still ongoing with regards to rebranding that hotel as a Trump hotel, simply because business has dropped off since he sold it approximately 5 years ago.
Can you help us understand just like how much security was there? Was it just impossible to talk to anyone? Like you seemed like you were being monitored constantly.
I think, as I described it in the first draft of my column, I described it as Stasi-style security. For those who don't know, that's the former East German secret police. You were being constantly watched, not by the Secret Service, I may add, but by the hired rent-a-cops who were employed by Allen and Co. For the duration of that conference. I'd acquired some photos of Ivanka which hadn't gone down particularly well, and the security were actually whizzing around on bikes, telling ordinary members of the public to stop taking pictures of the VIPs. It really got that nuts.
And so you keep saying you can't go back next year. Did you sign the order? Because we read in your piece that you refused to sign it. So how could they make you not come back?
Good question. I don't know if that will be enforced completely strictly, let's say. I don't know if they'll recognize me next year. Maybe I'll have to go in disguise with some glasses and a big sombrero or something. They put this no trespass order under my nose before I was shuffled out by the Sun Valley police. Obviously refused to sign because I don't think I did anything wrong.
And so there's some conflicting reports that we've read about the resort and lodge itself. Like some reports say it's this luxury property and others say it's basically like a Holiday Inn and it's only a 4-star hotel. Can you verify which one it is?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's writing that it's a Holiday Inn, because I don't know about your standards, but growing up in England, I would find a $648 bottle of champagne to be pretty luxury, to be honest. I don't think I've ever bought a bottle of wine that expensive. And I do like my wine.
And is this your first time covering the conference, or you've done it before?
First and last.
First and last, oh no.
The biggest, most deadly TV event of the summer is approaching, Shark Week.
Yay! Like, did you grow up in a Shark Week family? Because in mine, it was a week-long holiday every summer.
Yes, I watch it with my brother every summer, which is why it's so exciting for us to be invited by Discovery to join in on this year's Shark Week press junket.
Yes, we got to screen a few of the programs that will be airing next week, and they were really interesting and obviously scary. Like the scene of the middle school girls parasailing being lowered into shark-infested waters.
I saw sharks. Shut up. No, you didn't.
But as they were being reeled in, they saw more sharks.
That's a shark. That's a baby shark. Don't dip us. Don't dip us.
And they absolutely lose it when their feet hit the water.
I literally couldn't stop laughing because it was so terrifying. Like they were being lowered and screaming to the captain, like, do not lower us. There are 6 sharks circling below us. Do not lower us. And the captain was just like, they're just kidding.
There's no sharks.
Literally they were in the water with the sharks.
Luckily, they were pulled out. They're okay. But then the video of the first ever double shark attack.
As Shannon carves into the crest of a wave, the dorsal fin of a great white surfaces. And then, the horrifying reality. A second fin. The sharks collide. Shannon flips in the air and disappears beneath the surface. Shannon is trapped between 2 great whites.
And the experts were saying they're not sure if it was a coordinated attack together or if they were competing with each other. But luckily the surfer was okay.
And then there was that devil shark that there was an entire episode on, and we'll actually be interviewing one of the divers from the episode later. And apparently the shark was 16 feet long and it attacked 2 people in 2 weeks off the coast of an island in the West Indies.
Yeah, that was a really cool investigation. And I guess Shark Week has been airing since 1988, so it's the longest running cable TV programming event in history, and it still pulls in roughly 20 million viewers every year.
So the series initially started as like a conservation effort and to kind of just clear up misconceptions about sharks, which have actually been in the oceans for about 400 million years, which is insane. And even though Shark Week has become like obviously more sensationalized over the years, it still is a cultural phenomenon.
So we got to speak to one of the hosts of this year's specials, and she was the first woman to ever have her own Shark Week show, journalist, diver, and conservationist Kinga Phillips.
Okay, so we have to ask, because we're so curious, how did you first get involved with Shark Week in general? Did you have like experience specifically with sharks? How did this all start?
That is a great question. And it's a long and winding road that started with me watching Jaws as a kid and becoming extremely terrified and not wanting to go into swimming pools, bathtubs, the water at all. And then because I'm a journalist, and even as a kid, I was always really curious. I went, why am I so scared? Like, what's the reality of this? And then I was probably in my 20s when I went out to Hawaii and did a cage dive, and a big tiger shark showed up. And I was like, whoa, like, this is incredible. And also, it doesn't want to eat me. Like, the media has portrayed this differently. And so I started working with an organization called Shark Allies and have worked with them for many years while also doing adventure travel shows for TV, working with Travel Channel and National Geographic. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's like a natural progression towards Shark Week here. I did my first one in 2021, and that was really exciting.
Wow, we never ever would have guessed that you started being terrified of sharks. The sneak peek we got from next week's programming is when you're out hunting for the devil shark and you're in the boat and you guys see a big tiger shark coming towards you and you just jump right in the water with it. Like, are you ever these days scared when you're around sharks? And like, what is going through your head when they're like swimming inches away from you?
You know, that's such a good question because I can't say that I'm afraid because we have so much experience in observing the animals and knowing how to react around them. But they're apex predators and they have millions of years of evolution that teaches them to hunt and to eat. So you should have a solid, healthy respect for sharks. And if you guys saw some of those clips, there's a moment in one of those shows where the shark charges me and I have to grab it in the safety diver and I push it away. That was not expected. And in the moment, you know, you asked what you're thinking, you were honestly, it's a survival instinct. You don't think anything.
Yeah, we did see you deal with a lot of like tiger sharks on the show this year, but we also saw like in your analysis, you kind of analyzing the attacks of like bull sharks and great whites and black tips. Do you have a favorite type of shark, a shark that you're most like scared of, and which one you think is like the deadliest overall?
Ooh, great questions. I am partial to tiger sharks. I've spent the most time with them. I love them. I think they are such beautiful sharks. I'm probably the most comfortable in the water with them. Great whites are extraordinary. Great hammerheads are just the dreamiest sharks. Being in the water with oceanic white tips is incredibly intimidating. I always say they're like a Fortune 500 CEO. They walk in and they're like, I'm here. Everyone get behind me. You know, oftentimes when we're working with sharks, with the big sharks, with tigers, if they come into you and you have to redirect them, you can kind of move them with your hands. Oceanics, I don't want my hands near them.
And so in one of the programs, you broke down why shark attacks are so deadly and sharks are basically killing machines. Like you talked about their teeth and like how they shake you and ambush you. Can you just kind of explain like why they are so deadly?
They are essentially swim, mate, eat, swim, mate, eat. That's what they do. And they are perfectly designed for that. They have 7 senses. So if there's food around, they're going to find it. And when they find that food, they want it. One of the things with swimming with sharks is like maintaining eye contact because they want to sneak up on you. They are designed for tearing flesh apart, especially tiger sharks. Like their teeth are designed to break apart shells of sea turtles. So if one comes to you and you know they'll do the bump and bite, that's how they test things because they don't have hands, so they can't be like, well, what are you? Let me check you out. If they just give you one test bite, well, oh, there goes your arm.
Something else that we really love about Shark Week is that you're always like learning something new that you just never knew about sharks. Is there a new discovery you kind of learned of recently that really shocked you?
So one of the things that they're learning about now and we're studying extensively is what makes certain sharks go after people or objects that maybe they normally wouldn't? Is it a personality trait where some of these sharks are a lot more bold than others? Because we're talking about clear Caribbean water. They're not making a mistake there.
Can you give us some best tips for swimming? But then also we saw the videos of even if you're just kayaking and sharks coming up, how can we stay safe in the water?
Probably the most important thing when getting in the water is looking at your environment. You know, there were sea lions present, or there was a bait ball and there were birds diving in, so you knew that there were fish underwater. That's shark food. Really, it's about erratic movements. Like if you're in the water and you do know there's a shark and people panic, which is kind of normal, and they start splashing around and thrashing, that's going to have the opposite effect of what you want, because the sharks are going to be like, "Oh, what's this? Movement and splashing? Is this an injured fish?"
We have read that shark populations are increasing in the US. Like, why do you think that is? Is that just because we're getting so much better at protecting them?
Exactly. So we depleted shark populations for such a long time that we'd eradicated like 70% of the sharks in the ocean. So now with modern protections, exactly correctly, like you said, shark populations are coming back. We do want them there. They're apex keystone species that help keep our oceans healthy. So it's a good thing.
And you were actually, we know, the first woman to host the first, like the Shark Week show that was in 2021. Why do you think the adventure space and like the nature space even is so male dominated still? And have you seen signs that that might be changing?
It's definitely changing. And, you know, that was such a huge honor to be the first female host of Shark Week. That was awesome. And they've obviously had amazing female scientists on there. They've had celebrities on there. But to get to have my own show was really, really special. And when I got into TV like 25 years ago, I was always the sidekick and I'd get to point at things. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, this is cool. Yeah, this is fun. Gotta work my way up from this." And eventually just things started shifting, as they always do in society. And now you see a lot of women in that space, you know, really representing it publicly, and that's great.
And this episode of ours is coming out before Shark Week. So why do you think people should tune into Shark Week this year?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, we have 20 brand new shows, so that's a lot of new Shark Week shows. And they just run the gauntlet of everything. If you want to be entertained and have fun and watch cool stuff happen, we got it. If you want science and knowledge and education and information, we got it. So it's a little bit of everything, you know, and that's what makes our Shark Week really fun. And we have different species of sharks, and we have like extraordinary scientists and personalities, and all the people who work at Shark Week that I've ever worked with love sharks. So there is a lot of passion behind it.
Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Newsgirls. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And join us next week because we are going to space with the American Natural History Museum.
Bye!